Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of Becoming a Gibborim. This is part 5, and now that I've got up to a whole hand's worth, it's going to get crazy, because if you didn't know it, today, we're going on the run. For real. We're about to go into the do haste to leave kind of scenario. It's going to be all kinds of talk on egress, and why you should leave sometimes. Quickly, but with maybe some planning. We're going to talk a little bit about planning and why it's important if you want to be mighty to have a backup plan, because sometimes to be mighty means you're definitely just going to run now. Just going to run real fast. Yeah, we're going to talk about how basically people in the underground worlds operate when they're running, because it's important. And there's a lot of people who may not currently be on the run or being thinking of themselves maybe ever as part of the underground, because why would I ever end up in the underground? Why would I ever be hunted? I'm like in America, you know? People aren't going to hunt me. No. But that's okay, because if you don't believe that, we'll talk about people who in other countries, like this book talks about, The Insanity of God, Nick Ripken. That's not his real name because that's an alias. That means it's a name other than his own, because he operates in places around the world where people just get executed, not a little bit, like they get systematically hunted with such precision and intentionality that it upends entire social orders to never come back. Like it drives entire good heroes away from countries as a whole, like Somalia. Just giant red X on that map. For most Christian organizations, they just won't even go there. But I think there's lots of crazy, unbelievably, outrageously passionate, bold, and courageous individuals trapped in the stagnated body of this creature we've called the American Christian Church for all these times. This corporate franchise Christianity that most of us are raised in. I think there's just a bunch of rotting poison in it, and I'm not afraid to just talk about that, frankly, at times. But a lot of times what I'm trying to do is put some unction in your gumption to remind you that you could live dangerously now, like right now. You could really seriously use some danger in your life. It's good for you. You could really use some persecution, some time spent running for your life. Actually, it's really good for you. It will reveal some things in you that just can't be uncovered any other way. You need it in your life. Persecution to most people is something they avoid. It's something they'd like hide from. They don't want anything to do with it. But there's other parts of the world where, like in China, they didn't even think you had earned your seminary degree unless you'd served 3 years in prison for being convicted of religious activity. They thought that was seminary. I think our current seminary is prison. Truly, I'm not kidding even a little bit. You basically went to prison for 3 years thinking you were free. That's not going to sit well with some of you. I'm not saying all seminaries are prison. Just most everything they'll ever teach you in most of them. Not all of them, just most of it. Just like our totally corrupted and controlled architected system of higher learning and education that we brand in America as true and valid and going to be worth betting your light on. Bet your life on this thing. That's it. Everything else pretty much will come out to be nonsense and garbage that you've eaten most of your life. And it's got to get vomited up. And you generally vomit on the run. That's why we're talking about running today, because that's exactly what's going to happen to you, son. If you end up on the run, like a lot of these people in a lot of places around the world, you're going to run till you puke. You're so sick and tired and exhausted and depleted and fatigued. Like you've probably never really been tired. No, you'll learn that once you go on the run. You'll learn that once you live never sleeping restfully or soundly again. Maybe for years. Maybe for years you never sleep soundly, ever again. Maybe ever again till you die. That's going on the run. We're talking about going into the wilderness. Not like the Moses kind of wilderness people think of, where it's just, I don't know, maybe that desert land people think of. Sometimes you can run into like forests. I'm a little more a fan of running into forests or caves. I'm a big fan of running into caves, tunnels too. I'm that guy who, like, when you find like a portal in the earth, I want to just go in there. I'm innately curious, and I simply must go preach the gospel to every creature. And I think there's cave trolls in there that I definitely think need to hear about the good news and the lamp that is to my feet and the light to my path. I like that. I want armor and swords and spears to go investigate creepy tunnels all the time. That's why I keep telling you guys about swords and spears and shields and armor, and not so much about all them firearms. I don't talk about that because have you ever shot anything in a tunnel? Once. One time. Have you ever not worn ear protection and fired a shotgun? Ever. Then done it in a tunnel. Maybe you've been to a range indoors where it was deafeningly loud and it shook your body. That's why I don't talk about those bang sticks. True story. Because maybe that all of this is also so we can just go raid underground places. Swords and spears. Because if a sword could reach around in fighting quarters that were tight and cramped, like a Roman legionary line where everything's cramped like this, and that's a lot of tunnel time. Sometimes it's like this. Spear! I think of tunnels like that. Anyways, I'm trying not to get too tunnel vision away from running, but this is the truth of what we're dealing with here, folks. So for those of you that don't know why I randomly pull out like knives and swords or shields, I'm working on shields. I don't have a working shield with me currently besides my shield of faith, which is Robusto because I've been shot a lot. You have to get shot for your shield to get tested. You got to go test your armor. Anyways, David, and we're going to talk about David and John, David being a man on the run. We're going to talk about other believers, other humans that just end up on the run. I'm going to talk to you about what it's like to be on the run from a personal witness testimony and standpoint of how to present tense equip yourself on the run a little bit. I'm not going to, I may talk some serious tradecraft, and it might really behoove some of you to take notes in your own hand with pen and paper and not on a digital front. Because sometimes all the electronics just turn off. Boom! Like for real. And then all you're going to have is what's in your mind, what you've stored away, sincerely, what you've stored, memorized, what your memories are, what you have currently on your body, maybe clothes, but generally not electricity because I can't power an iPhone with my fingertips. We'll wait for transhumanisms to make that available and appreciated. We'll see. I'm not going to sign up for that class, nor should you ever, because dang, you're already upgraded. You need the power of the living God to upgrade you. That's all, son. He'll light up a room. True story. Read the Bible. He's done it. Anyways, if you need light and you're in a cave and you don't have a nice headlamp or a flashlight, because I talk about enormously bright flashlights all the time. Oh, uncomfortably bright. Go light up the night talk. I did a video on these. Go get flashlights. It would behoove you to have flashlight and knives all the time. They're a good starting place. And a Bic lighter because they're cheap, readily available, and basically dependable. They're mostly dependable. And a flint and steel is extremely hard to use, guys. I love all you hardcore survivalists out there who like to start fires with flint and steel. Respect. I've done it. It's not pleasant. It's exhausting. And that's cool sometimes. But a lot of times I just like to go. You hear that? That's the sound of a pocket opening because I have pants. I should wear pants and pockets. Oh, Phil. Mostly dependable. Mostly dependable. Bic lighters. Brightly lit. It's because when you drop them, you can find them. It's devastating when you drop this and you can't find it. It's one of the few things in my life I allow to be highly visible. Everything else is just grayish background noise until it's shiny. Okay, but being people on the run sincerely means sometimes you need flashlights, like in tunnels. But if you don't have one, you can always pray and ask the God of the true light, not the Luciferian monstrosity that most of you totally idolatrous people of deception have been blinded by the light of Lucifer. And you've totally just been misled. And you're currently hoodwinked. So that's another, I talk about that in Prayers of Repentance. Go to that section of my life, talking about moving that stuff off. Because then, once you do, you can have the Father bring you the light of truth and to shine it into your life. And light up even a tunnel if you were crawling through a tunnel and you needed to see real quickly. He can do that. We're going to read about David Maybe we'll read about it. I might get there. There's so much to read, and there's so little time for tangents. But I digress. That being said, going on the run is a serious thing, and it's definitely going to happen to a lot of you. It's already happened to a good fair amount of the body of believers since the history of forever. So get in line, son. We got a lot of history to cover from the beginning to the end. Basically, you will be persecuted was a promise by our commander. They persecuted me, therefore they shall persecute you. But when they persecute you here, what's he say? What's he say to do? If they persecute you in one city, flee! Flee! Run to another city. So you get to flee. You have a command edict from the Most High, sometimes to flee immediately, like Passover. Great example. You should do it immediately. If this is past it, don't worry. He covers and gives you a second chance to do the Passover on a different appointed time because you were too busy in war. Maybe. Or you were just too busy in the war of your mind, which had been captured by dragons. Get out of it. Get out of the system while you can. Anyways, you guys, celebrating Passover is another time where people literally prepared to bug out. For real. They had their belts on. Oh, I love it. You need belts in your life. Put them on. They'll hold your pants up when you lose weight. Because when you go into the wilderness, I'm telling you, you're going to literally lose weight. Just enormous amounts of weight are going to come off of you because your body's also kind of engineered to go on the run occasionally. It's called fasting. It's tremendous for you. You can do long distance endurance feats even if you've not necessarily been disciplining yourself for it because your body's been storing up all kinds of garbage in there for a while, for most of us. All of the just deep level coping we've used by food has been storing away, but it can become our endurance fuel. It's true. Read a book. Actually read a book, okay? I'm going to make a suggestion that if you read it, it would radically change you and give you all kinds of foreknowledge and insight and understanding. It's called Natural Born Heroes. Boy, I can't remember the author's name, but it's about a gentleman. It's a long story. Basically, it's about super endurance feats of man or women who were just yos and bros until one day they had some unction in their gumption and they went after it with due haste, like the resistance fighters on Crete during World War II, and Germans just started raining out of the sky. What? Yeah, sometimes pig farmers looked up in the sky and saw Germans in battle array falling from it. That's a different kind of day, right? You're like, Tuesday, John. Good to see ya. Got any eggs? Good. I'm going to send the sow over. All right. Stormtroopers are coming. This is literally the marching songs of the Empire should be playing in your head at this point. They're falling from the skies. Hear me. If the stormtroopers suddenly start falling from the skies, it's a good time to have already have zeroed your rifle. Do you get what I'm saying there? That is where a distance tool is very effective and generally won't cut it. Practical limitations, I understand. But these pig hunters, these pig farmers, that's one of the examples he gives. Obviously, they weren't all that. Some of them were milk farmers, as in they farmed milk out of cows. It's an amazing gift. Love those people. Once again, back to my reference on cheese haulers. Love you guys. But they pick up rifles that they'd been shooting pigs with because apparently pigs were a thing over on Crete, and they were really hard to hunt a pig. Have you ever tried to shoot a pig on the run through brush accurately? Because shot placement matters more than the caliber of my bullet. I get distracted. There's a lot of conversation pieces that have been said in time and memorial about caliber and crushing, stopping power. Shot placement over all of that nonsense is everything. Anyways, these farmers pick up their rifles and start dropping entire units out of the sky. They just start shooting them. They're like, that That's nice. They're just hanging out. Boom, boom, boom. Sorry, probably more like boom. Boom. Probably like a 4 to 5, maybe 5 to 8 second. That's good controlled fire, right? That'd be a good rifleman, like a rifleman platoon should know how to do that. Just good, steady, disciplined fire. Not mag dumps for doofuses. Ammunition's limited. Anyways, they're shooting with precision. They're annihilating huge swaths of stormtroopers out of the sky. Basically, they wiped out almost the entire first wave, just out of the blue, out of nowhere, because they were falling from the sky. This whole book goes into these resistance fighters and these marathon efforts of things they did during that time, of crossing mountainsides on foot over and over again with almost no food, almost zero food, or like tiny caloric bursts of like crackers. They're like, yeah, I had some milk cheese. I feel recharged. Boing. And they'd take off and they would almost bound. And the author is really dealing with this whole other mechanism of the body that allows physical acts of endurance to be mightily enhanced. And it's called your fascia. Your fascia. If you look up fascia, there's all these people out there in like the whole mud flood Tartaria world that looked up fascia. They didn't just look at the body of the body has fascia. You just skipped right past it. The body has this whole system in it called fascia. When you bend your arms and you stretch your fingers out yay wide, all the way wide as you can, and you like bounce, you can actually get a little spring in your arms if your fingers are really flexed. Like let's talk about, I'll give you a sports reference. I won't just totally crush the whole your every aspect of sporting garbage. They're not really heroes, but there's an iconic picture of Michael Jordan dunking a basketball with his fingers stretched and the ones at the back. They're almost always both stretched. And a lot of times they even put their tongue out for theatrical Baal worship and all kinds of garbage. Seriously, he was the bull. Anyways, that's why most of it's garbage and worship to pagan gods. Let it go. There's more cool things out there. You could read books and learn about real life and humans that did something other than putting things through spaces once with repeated precision. There's lots more to the world out there, guys. Learn it. It's amazing. Anyways, fascia is a system in your body that's that springy connective tissue. Most doctors, why I say you don't know near as much as you ought to, don't even know about fascia, really. You know some, but you also don't understand that the fundamental importance of how our body moves, like all of the bending, snapping, twisting, all this stuff is so interconnected that if you don't address that entire system of the body, you're just totally neglecting the whole. Yeah. Chiropractic care, fundamentally, critically important for helping this. But he talks about people basically being able to spring in their step. You can load your fascia system with energy, with tension, and then release it. And it's a way of being more efficient on the run. Because remember, we're talking about being on the run. And I actually mean running, not just hoofing it with hooves, but with your feet, not that horsepower thing you pour gasoline into. Because you know what? Practical, tactical limitations occur. Some of them involved no more wheels, bro. The wheel is now a technology that is far more advanced than you're capable of equipping because gasoline is limited and you are also very easily tracked on the roads. Hate to say it, but it's true. License plate scanners, mighty prevalent these days. Cameras on all the corners of basically most intersections. That's a definite real one. Children. Sometimes my child's crying. I apologize. I don't apologize. That's just real life. My children cry sometimes. It's unfortunate, but it's a real life. Screaming babies in the backseat, really unfortunate. Screaming babies in a backpack because you're on the run, most seriously unfortunate. This is why God tells us to pray that our flight would not be with nursing infants, because seriously, that'd be tough. But it happens. Read about these people in Natural Born Heroes. He's got a lot of evolutionary garbage in there, and I'm sorry for that, because it's inevitable if you get plugged in and trained by the beast system that it's going to come out your pores at times. Otherwise, he's got some fantastic stuff. I entrust that some of you know how to use wisdom and discretion and understand that just because I make a referral or a recommendation, I don't categorically endorse everything that person is saying, right? Teaching tips. Anyways, you physically have to go on the run sometimes with your actual feet running, which is why socks are important. Wear them. Actually wear socks. You know what these are? Wool socks. I just pulled this off my foot. I really did. I can't quite show you my foot. But I wear wool socks with regularity. And so should you. And if you didn't know about wool socks, now you do. Look up wool socks and then buy them. If not, go to a thrift store, even if it's illegal. Kind of, a little bit. It's essential, always, that you have good socks. Fundamentals of running. Jonathan and David deal with some fundamentals about running. They deal with communications. They deal with code books. They also deal with clothing a little bit. But sincerely, your feet on the run are very important, and you must tend to them. They must be taken care of. And the foot fundamentals are definitely socks, not cotton. That's not a sock. That's something you were sold. That's a product. Cotton's not a material to be worn on your feet unless you have no other options available at the time. Be thankful you have socks, because otherwise you're barefoot, and that's savage. Barefoot in shoes is just terrible. Barefoot and barefoot is even worse. I'm not trying to diss you barefooted runner clans out there. You're spectacular. I love you. Half of my heart always wants to be in the barefooted clan, but then I run into thorns, and I immediately realize I don't want to be in the barefooted clan anymore. My feet are soft and supple sometimes. It's brutal. That's why you should wear socks and good shoes. Good shoes are fundamental to running. So are good pants, because your legs are going to get shredded in your shorts. Wear pants. Wear underwear. I say that with a slight caveat. Some of you have worn things that have been sold to you as underwear. It's not actually underwear. You know that, right? That's just like fallen angel's secret garbage thing to ruin the minds and the souls of men with lust and fashion. Marketed underwear. That's not an undergarment. That literally will destroy you if you tried to run at all. And I mean it. Wear better underwear. I don't need to get any more graphic than that, do I? You're a mature human. Think, even if you're not, I love you, each and every part of you. Listen, whatever you're doing, put on real underwear. Look up better underwear. I recommend wool underwear. Yes, they make wool underwear because it swallows stinkiness. Actually, wool literally eats your stink. It's amazing. That's why you should have it on your socks and your loins. You should gird about your loins with the belt of truth, but your loins you should girt with wool if you can. Maybe linen. I don't know about that. I know there's a whole other, not definitely like wretchedly deceived group out there who's all about linen undergarments for different reasons. But unfortunately, most Masonic cult groups have the same kind of ruse. If you know what I'm saying. Bad influence. Corrupting good doctrine. Anyways, wool undergarments. They're available. They're not as durable. I have to admit, this is the weakness of wool. You will wear it straight out. You will definitely wear it out. But it will swallow your stink and your sweat like nothing else. And because of that, it should be on those places that get sweaty and stinky with regularity, like your undergarment spaces. Definitely imperative for being on the run. Another thing about being on the run, put a belt on your pants. Actually, put a belt on. Put a belt on pants. Pants are really important. Pants are super imperatively important. And when you lose all your weight, you're going to need your belt. And when you want to put knives on your belt, because you should put knives on your belt, go back to my fixed blade frenzy. Some knives can go in pockets, remember? That's fantastically scary and intimidating. But it has clips that go in your pant pockets. But all this stuff is going to need to be held up. Like when you want to dump a couple of like Lara bars, you want to put some like food snack stuffables in your pockets, or if you want to put a Bic lighter and a chapstick and a water bottle. Maybe not a water bottle. I generally don't put water bottles in my pockets. I put them on my back in a camel back because that's where camels don't keep water. It's just a myth. It's where camels keep fat because fat is fuel. Remember, endurance athletes, you're going to use all that fat to be fuel, if you have any. Whatever you have will literally just get eaten up. Your body will use it all. Don't worry. It'll find a way. Love will find a way to make sure it burns that fat off your body when you're on the run. So when you're on the run, it's important to remember clothing is fundamental. Footwear, fundamentals. Everything literally you put on every day is fundamentally important to everything you're going to do that day, because you may not ever get a change of clothes again the rest of your life. Wait. I may not ever have any other clothes? You may never change clothes again. Actually, think about it. You may run until you run and never change clothes again. You may just, maybe you'll wash that set of clothing. Maybe you'll wash that one. And maybe if you have one more. But you really can't carry a lot of clothes. You can only carry so many, so make them count. Make them the best quality with the most practical of options available to you. That's why I'm a big fan of long sleeve button-up shirts. You can roll down the sleeves and an undershirt under it, right? I've got options. I have now 2 pieces of clothing all the time. It's fantastic. That's why I talk about that for shirts. I like nylon. 100% nylon for durability factor, because I go outside and when I'm running, the brush is rough and nylon is a beneficially strong material. I would much prefer hemp pants and shirts. Nature's nylon. It's hemp. It's supra better than everything ever. Really, it's incredible. I love the durability factor of hemp. It also resists cuts. It really does. It's very tough to cut through hemp. Nylon, pretty easy. Spider silk, obviously. Who doesn't want to genetically hybridize goats and make that come out of their wombs and their bladders and their udders? Their udders. That would be a good idea. Let's do that. What could go wrong? Genesis 6, bro. Read about the days of the Watchers and meddling with genetics. Bad idea. Generally incurs the wrath of the living God. For starters. Anyways, nature made better materials, and they're readily available, and they grow like weeds everywhere, pretty much in every climate zone. Wool, sheep, pretty much everywhere. Linen, genuinely kind of can be grown most everywhere. Hemp, pretty much the same. Anyways, we could grow all our materials if we needed to. Maybe we should. Maybe you should go learn that right now. Maybe that's why I've been doing that for 10 months, just farming, learning, traveling around farming. Maybe you should do that. You could right now. Because you could be a man on the run and just go live on farms. Work on farms. Work on farms. It's a great place to be. And you can learn skills like how to stay on the run. It's fantastic. Anyways, there's lots of people that live on the run for various reasons. And because of that, they have to live in strange, unfamiliar places. David is about to live in a very strange and unfamiliar place called the wilderness. The wilderness is the place of who knows what. And well, I guess we'll find out, won't we? A whole lot of those moments for the rest of his days. As far as he knows, he doesn't know if he's going to get a change of clothes or anything. Because if you remember where I left y'all last week, part 4, right smack dab in the middle of David's going on the run now because Saul threw a spear into a wall and it almost stuck to his face. It said David slipped away sneakily. It didn't say sneakily. I added that part. That would be the part in parentheses if you were reading the biblical text in a good, betterish translation. That would be italicized to tell you that we made this up, kind of, and added it here. Like a lot of the NIV Bible should have more of that in it. Seriously. I'm going to get distracted on translation talk and all the garbage versions out there, but I don't want to get buried. Anyways, there is a sneaky way that David slips out. And because of that, David is now genuinely, seriously living on the run. David is being hunted by not just anyone. He's being actually personally hunted by the king. Okay. Some of you have major strong opinions about your rulers out there. I don't think one of you has personal vendetta marked on your head by your ruler. Maybe you do. If you do, I would love to hear your testimony. That sounds like something the whole body corporately needs to hear. Have you ever been personally hunted by the ruler of your land? That would be pretty exceptional. And I mean it, even if you're a criminal or were a criminal. Criminals are generally the good guys to other people, remember? Because all of you still have a life and a story that needs to be heard. And the body of Christ needs it more than ever. All of you testimony, every bit of it. Get it all out. Everything you did, good and bad and ugly, and all kinds of not so legal even. Get it out, because there's genuine power to confessing and expressing and being freed from the shackles of despair and hopelessness and misery we've been living in. David, running for his stinking life, for real, hunted by spear-throwing, good spear thrower, by the way, we talked about that, supernaturally evil spirit-empowered spear thrower, Saul. Pretty savage, okay? Saul seriously got the I want to kill David in the face kind of feeling going through his body. It's called a grudge. You could read in Mark 6 about someone else who had a grudge against like John the Baptist. Bad news, bears. Bad news. Grudges are bad. They generally are going to poison your soul, and they'll take from you everything, inevitably. But we're going to jump in here because we're going to hear about how to set up a little communications protection right now. Because when you're being on the run, you may not be able to communicate with people the same way you once were able to. Like when we read about Nick in The Insanity of God and some of these underground house churches, they communicated in code, actual code, like fun code too. Codes are pretty fun. If you haven't studied codes, read the Bible. It's full of it. Here's one. Ready? Let's go. All right. We're going to jump a little bit ahead in the story now because David just basically bails. He runs. No, we're going to jump right in. You know what? I'm just going to read it. Enjoy this. I'm going to try to read this with passion. Water. Fundamentals on the run. You can't go far. You really can't go far without it. We'll talk water and hydration maybe someday. Finding springs. Just pray to God. He'll give you spring water anywhere you need it. Anytime, day or night. It's all over this book. Out of your bellies will flow rivers of living water. If you need water, just pray, but have a good container to capture his genuine goodness in. Delicious. Anyways. Okay, so he stuck the spear in the wall. That's where I left you. Then Saul, so he stuck the spear into the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. Then Saul sent messengers to David's house to watch him in order to put him to death in the morning. That's kind. See, that's a prearranged kill time. We talked about special kill teams. They genuinely pick a time for you to die. And they generally do it. But Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, "If you do not save your life tonight, tomorrow you will be put to death." Good wife, hero, right now. This is why you need a very valiant woman in your life. That was dangerous of her to do because if you didn't know it, Saul's her dad. So her dad is hunting her husband. She does the right thing, which is to uphold her first covenant with her father in heaven, but her father on the earth, not after he's been given a covenant, or he's given the covenant away to David. David and Michal are in covenant. She does the right thing and protects her husband and says, "Honey, I love you. My dad sent men to murder you, and they're sitting outside. You got to get out tonight, not tomorrow, because if it's tomorrow, he'll kill you." Good wife. Amazing. This is why you should love your wife, not the black mirror. Okay? Turn off the garbage. Anyways, so Michal let David down through a window. This is his evac plan, by the way. I don't know about his bug out bag or 72-hour bag or his get home bag or any of those things. All I know in this story is what I would read into it. And I imagine David's hopefully got a bag with him. But sometimes, due to the nature of your egress, meaning because of how you physically have to get out of a building, you can't carry anything but your clothes. Actually. Because sometimes you have to get let out through a really tiny window that's on one corner of the house where nobody else is standing right then. Or you have to go out a basement window or a crawl space out of the attic. And you know what you can't drag with you? A backpack. Which is why just go back to the fundamentals of what's on your person and know that if you take the power of the living God with you, you have everything you need. But clothing is definitely something he's promised us. It's a good thing to have. And you should take that, a flashlight and a knife with you. If possible, it would behoove you, and a lighter. Anyways, the lighter makes more light. Anyways, when Michal took the house. I gotta say this though. So Michal let David down through a window, and he went out and fled and escaped. Boss, crushing it. David's on the run, officially. Now, problem here. Michal took the household idol and laid it in the bed and put a quilt of goat's hair at its head and covered it with cloths. Okay, when Saul sent messengers to take David, she said, "He is sick." Good wife. Okay, this is the Bible talking about kind of lying right now. Just saying. We're going to read a lot about that on the run. And cunningness. And maybe not saying the whole story. Because it would lead to the death of people unnecessarily. Anyways, we're going to go there. So when the messengers bring him up, okay, then the Saul sent messengers to see David again, saying, "Bring him up to me on his bed that I may put him to death." And when the messengers entered, behold, the household idol was on the bed with the quilt of goat's hair at its head. So Saul said to Michal, "Why have you so deceived me like this, and let my enemy go, so that he escaped?" And Michal said to Saul, "He said to me, 'Let me go. Why should I put you to death?'" Okay, Michal, by the way, put a super nasty household idol directly into their covenant marriage bed. Nasty. It's probably a shrunken head of their ancestor, actually. That's generally what these things are. If you look it up deeper and study this, people used to just shrink the heads of their dead relatives and keep the family spirit with them. And they would worship them and feed them and leave offerings to them. It's the worshiping of the dead. Not a good idea. Generally called necromancy. A lot of churches with veils, threads of Christianity still practice this. They just pray to idols they call saints and such. It's necromancy, folks. Don't put idols in your house. Ever. Drive them out of your house. David should have dealt with that. David didn't. It's going to lead to his wife getting into some sticky situations with her dad, murdering dad. Anyways, Saul said to Michal, okay, now David fled and escaped and came to Samuel at Ramah. So he flees to the word of the Lord, Samuel being the one who has the word of the Lord at the time majorly on him, and told him all that Saul had done to him. And he and Samuel went and stayed in Naioth. And it was told to Saul, saying, "Behold, David is at Naioth in Ramah." Then Saul sent messengers to take David. But when they saw the company of the prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing and presiding over them, the Spirit of Yahweh came upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. When it was told Saul, he sent another messengers, and they also prophesied. So Saul sent messengers again, the third time, and they also prophesied. Then he himself went to Ramah, and came as far as the large well that is in Seku, and he asked and said, "Where are Samuel and David?" And someone said, "Behold, they are at Naioth in Ramah." And he proceeded there to Naioth in Ramah. And the Spirit of Yahweh came upon Saul also, so that he went along prophesying continually until he came to Naioth in Ramah. He also stripped off his clothes, and he too prophesied before Samuel and lay down naked all that day and all that night. Therefore they said, "Is Saul also among the prophets?" That's spiritual protection on a supra scale. By the way, Samuel is protected so powerfully that when people come and try to give him a bad day, the Spirit of the living God comes on his enemies, and they prophesy. Mighty man. Can we talk about a Gibborim here? Gibborim in the room. Most certainly, Samuel. Read the book. He's got 2 books with his name on it in the Bible. Don't you think you should know his story better than you currently do? Probably it would behoove you. Check that out, son. Look into it, little daughter. You need to know this story. Samuel, like Elijah, I think there's actually a lot of times where the Spirit of the living God comes upon people who are hunting other humans, and they can't even get to them anymore because the Spirit of God is so powerfully in that area or on them that they can't even move. They literally fall down naked. That means their clothes came off at some point in that. That's some serious prophesying. You can dance your clothes right off. Definitely can do it. Take some Robusto, but you can do it. That's some unction that's a spiritual hedge of protection. Do you get what I'm getting at here? David ran to the house of protection. He went to get refuge, and he went to where he knew the refuge was always at. Samuel's house. Just wherever Samuel was always a safe place to be, because Samuel had the Spirit of the living God on him, which would give him supernatural insight and telling of anything he needed to know at any time, and he believed that. So David gets protected there. But then it says, David fled from Naioth in Ramah and came and said to Jonathan, this is his bestie. Remember, we talked about this in Soul Ties. Serious best friends here. They've waged a lot of battles together. They're blood brothers in a real way, okay? They have a serious bond here. So he goes to his best friend and he says, what have I done? And what is my iniquity? What is my sin before your father that he is seeking my life? And he said to him, far from it, you shall not die. Behold, my father does nothing, either great or small, without disclosing it to me. So why should my father hide this thing from me? It is not so. Yet David vowed again, saying, your father knows well that I have found favor in your sight. And he has said, do not let Jonathan know this, or he will be grieved. But truly, as Yahweh lives and as your soul lives, there is hardly a step between me and death. Then Jonathan said to David, whatever you say, I will do for you. That's a good battle buddy. So David said to Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I ought to sit down and eat with the king. But let me go that I may hide myself in the field until the third evening. This is a strategy, folks. Pay attention. They're about to set up, right now, a bug-out plan. And it is not going to involve normal open language. It is going to be a secret between Jonathan and David only. And it's really important you understand what they're getting at. If you're going to develop an egress plan, it should genuinely be kept between you and maybe one, two. The two I really begrudgingly lift. You generally should have it between you and one other person. And that's the one other person that you trust absolutely, categorically, without any doubt. This is the person you have that strong unction and spiritual connection with on a totally different level. Because you even talking to this person could likely lead to their death now. So you're putting them at danger. Because if you go on the run, generally, you don't ever go back to the people that you love. Really. You pretty much don't go back for any reason. Because when you do, then they look at that person as a potential collaborator. Now they're complicit with a crime, maybe, and they're going to jail. Now maybe your wife and children have no dad or mom, right? Maybe your best friends no longer have their dad or mom. So you got to really start taking seriously every single move you make if you're going to go on the run, actually on the run, really, really on the run, because it could lead to some serious costly consequences later on for everybody around you. So David and Jonathan decide to set up a code between them. David says, behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I ought to sit down and eat with the king, right? Big feast days. Feasts are biblical. Still. And I ought to sit down to eat with the king. But let me go that I may hide myself in the field until the third morning. David's going to bug out into a field for a couple days, okay? If your father misses me at all, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me to run to Bethlehem, his city, because it's the yearly sacrifice for his whole family. And if he says to you, it is good, your servant will be safe. But if he's angry, know that he has decided on evil. Therefore, deal kindly with your servant, for you have brought your servant into a covenant of Yahweh with you. But if there is iniquity in me, put me to death for yourself. For why then should he bring me to your father? Jonathan said, far be it from me, from you. For if I should indeed learn that evil has been decided by my father to come upon you, then would I not tell you about it? Then David said to Jonathan, who will tell me if your father answers you harshly? Then Jonathan said, "Come, and let us go out into the field." So both of them went out into the field. Prearranging a signal for distance. This is how you can communicate without having to use your mouthpiece. Signals intelligence. Study. I went too far. I apologize. Come and let us go out into the field. So both of them went out to the field. Then Jonathan said, "May Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel, be witness. When I have sounded out my father," meaning figured out what the heck his father's going to do next, "about this time tomorrow or the third day, behold, if there is good feeling towards David, shall I not then send to you and make it known to you? But if it please my father to do you harm, may Yahweh do so to Jonathan, and more also, if I do not make it known to you and send you away, that you may go in safety. And may Yahweh be with you as he has been with my father. If I am still alive, will you not show me the loving kindness of Yahweh, that I may not die? You shall not cut off your loving kindness from my house forever, not even when Yahweh cuts off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth." So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, "May Yahweh require it at the hands of David's enemies." Jonathan made David vow again because of his love for him, because he loved him as he loved his own life. Then Jonathan said to him, "Tomorrow is the new moon, and you will be missed because your seat will be empty. When you've stayed for 3 days, you shall go down quickly and come to the place where you hid yourself on that eventful day, and you shall remain by the stone of Ezel. I will shoot 3 arrows to the side, as though I shot at the target. And behold, I will send the lad, saying, 'Go find the arrows.' And if I specifically say to the lad, 'Behold, the arrows are on this side of you, get them,' then come, for safety is for you, and no harm, as Yahweh lives. But if I say to the youth, 'Behold, the arrows are beyond you,' go, for Yahweh has sent you away. As for the agreement of which you and I have spoken, behold, the Lord is between you and me forever." So David hid in the field, and when the new moon came, the king sat down to eat his food. Needless to say, I'm going to fast forward a fuzz. Saul goes to this festival, goes to a feast. Jonathan shows up. David's seat is empty. Day 1, nobody says anything. Day 2, noted. But basically by the end of this, Jonathan ends up ducking from a spear his father threw at his head. Saul's got some serious unction in his gumption to execute David with due haste. Jonathan definitely knows for certain Saul intends him harm, because Saul accuses Jonathan of collaborating with David and then tries to kill him for collaborating with him. Remember, I talked about how collaborating with someone on the run can be very costly. Jonathan almost dies for it. But he slips away again, because if you're going to get into mighty man talk, you should probably learn how to dodge spears and bullets. Just maybe spears. We'll work on bullets. Just don't be where they are going to be. It's most fundamentals of distance tools, right? Or shields. Make better shields, y'all. Get your shield game improved. Improve your shield game tremendously. Really. Some of you guys who work in the defense industry who've been making terrible decisions most of your life and working for monsters, you should take what you've been working on and set it free. Let it go. Get it out there to the people. Some broskies on the inside, on the outside out there. On the run, they need those nice tools. They need better armor and shields. We need good shields, y'all. Anyways, get to work. Go work. Figure out ways to make great shields. Awesome shields. Sword-stopping, bullet-stopping, artillery-shuttering shields. Figure it out. They're all amazing. Then Saul hurled his spear at Jonathan to strike him down. Dang. I love that verse. Not for the reasons you do, but because it's just ridiculously incredible. Family disagreements in the house of Saul ended with spear throwing. Different time, man. I think it would be a lot better of a society if most men carried spears. We'd be so much gentler with our words. Them fighting words. So Jonathan then knew that his father had decided to put David to death. Yeah, most certainly. Then Jonathan arose from the table in fierce anger. He just had a spear thrown at his face. So Jonathan knew that and did not eat food on the second day of the new moon, for he was grieved over David because his father had dishonored him. Now it came about in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field for the appointment, a designated time and a meeting. Okay, basic tradecraft, just a little bit. We have ways of communicating with other people who are on the inside, who know that we're trying to talk to them, but they don't need to know who we are, and we don't certainly need to know who they are, okay? In underground, non-permissive environments, there's ways of marking a location for a later appointed time. And you can mark a location so that only people who generally know what to look for will notice it's been marked. All right? You can designate an area, but you generally don't do that by saying, "Let's meet here." No. Chalk. It's old. It's foundationally, fundamentally, readily available. It's basically scratching something with something that leaves some of itself behind. It's readily available as in it's probably a rock chalk talk for how to do spycraft now, okay? You mark a spot in different kinds of ways, but basically you're going to leave a little bit of a mark somewhere, generally in the non-natural eye scan of the human vision, okay? People generally operate with their eyes in about yay height. Standing position. Most people walk around when they're walking. Some people scoot about when they're scooting, but most people use their eyes to scan natural things at eye level. That means there's whole fields of visions that you can exploit that people just generally don't see. They physically don't see in because they're not looking there. There's a difference between people that are looking and people that are just walking and moving. Most people are never looking. And if they are, they've been trained to, because it takes discipline to look, actually look. To be a trained observer, go study trained observers. All this stuff is so readily available, you guys. It's ridiculous. It's unimaginably available. You can go become a trained observer with due haste. You could take a crash course today, spend 4 hours just studying the powers of observation, and then exercising it rapidly. Go learn how to observe things actually, not just things you see. Actually observe things. So if you're not a trained observer, most people generally don't look beyond arm level, like waist height to head height tends to be about their scanning level most of the time. Well, then there's these areas above you called arm's reach, and most people just generally don't look up there. So that's a good place to mark stuff with. It's a good place to reach up high. It's another great thing to put it down low, way down low, like toddler level low, because most people are lazy and they don't crawl around anymore because it's exhausting to crawl around when you're big. But my toddler is learning how to crawl, and her eye level, it's a totally different world. And because of that, I crawl with her with regularity. So should you. I don't know why you don't crawl, but you should learn to crawl. You should learn to run, granted, but you should learn to crawl because you'll probably spend some serious time crawling. Remember, David's hiding in a field. You ever hid in a field, folks? Not hide and seek hide. You ever hid for your life in a field? You're pretty much trying to flatten your face inside the earth. You've never more in your life wanted to hide your face, like literally every bit of your flesh. I've had bullets fired directly over my face space. That's in my standing normal average height level. I had to crawl with my face in the dirt like this. That kind of crawling. Like fingers crawling. Like newborn infant trying to figure out life crawling, where you just can't figure it out so your head's too tired and you just keep it flat. But you can seriously crawl with your fingers and your face in the dirt and trying to bury your head as you go. Just plow the ground. That's what we called it. I knocked this thing all over the place. I'm sorry. Not particularly sorry. You get the point. You should learn how to crawl. David's crawling, hiding out in a field. People need to crawl. So you can crawl to mark your spot. Okay? Crawl down, Mark it somewhere that most people wouldn't see. Or you can have like a different colored light in your... Maybe you just have a different colored light that you turn on in your house one night. That's pretty easy, because then it's a flip of a switch. But it's not your house. Maybe it's your third best friend's neighbor's back door that you changed out a light bulb in, and that you now have a timer on, and it goes off when you make it go off, right? You can get creative. You don't have to make everybody know that they're in the network. It's better if they don't know. Remember, we talked about that. Better that most people have no idea what the heck any of this is, so that they have what's called plausible deniability, because you don't want to get people hurt unnecessarily when you're on the run. Remember, diligence here. You can mark places with prearranged signals. Colors are very good because you can see them. Shapes, they're somewhat recognizable, but sometimes you can't mark with shapes like, I put a triangle on the rock. Sometimes your triangle and my triangle don't look the same. A little bit, really. If you're trying to scratch a triangle on a rock before, but not looking and trying to look casually while you're like, I'm reading this newspaper. Let's put it in present text. I'm looking at my phone like a drone and scratching with my other hand. My triangle probably looks like this at some point in there, right? And he's like, that's a rectangle. Maybe he's been marked. Maybe he's been found. Maybe this spot is... Anyways, it leads to miscommunication. Colors are pretty fantastic. Really make sure your cues and make sure that your intelligence on the predetermined signal is pretty easily to discern, okay? So make sure when you have your signal that it's easy to understand and it's easy to replicate, because sometimes you'll have to do it when it's raining or you're physically on the run and there's other people chasing you, and it's fantastically exhilarating at the time. But sometimes you need to load that spot. So David and Jonathan, they're shooting arrows as their signs, right? Fantastic. Go beyond it is what he shouts out at him. So David obviously gets the cue from Jonathan's information report that, hey, guess what, David, you should run for your life. Jonathan and David have a goodbye moment. This is the last time, I'm almost 100% certain, this is the last time they're ever going to see each other. Next time Jonathan and David are reunited, I'm pretty certain it's David and Jonathan's body. David seeing Jonathan's body or thanking the men who got their bodies back. Bad news bears. Hold on. Give me one moment, please. I will wrap up shortly. I'm needed for dad duties. I get excited and carried away in this, and I've been lost in it for a few hours. Anyways, real quick, the last few things I need to make sure people understand about this is prearranged signals are really, really fundamentally important, because when you're on the run and someone marks an information cache, because sometimes you're just leaving information there. Sometimes you're just leaving, like, I don't know, micro USBs. You ever looked at micro USBs? They're very tall, moderately available in all situations. They're weather resistant. They're generally waterproofed, kind of, easily. Cheese wax. Yeah, it'll survive a journey into other places. Micro USBs are great ways of transmitting that. USBs, all kinds of stuff, data drives. We live in an information age, so you generally are going to move information that way. Like, how are you going to move 550,000 copies of a Bible? Well, you could just move one that's on a data drive that goes around and is shared, because sometimes you're just trying to smuggle Bibles. Remember, guys, we're talking about ways of working in the underground for persecuted church movements. Bibles are fundamentally the most potent super weapon you could ever give anybody, and that should be smuggled more than anything ever. But digital Bibles are super convenient to smuggle because they weigh almost nothing, because they're imaginary ones and zeros until they're printed. But not everybody has electricity. But you can smuggle all kinds of stuff, and you can load one of your information points by having a prearranged signal, and then somebody else, it's called a drop, because you leave something there or you leave information there, and then somebody else at another time who hopefully you do not know, or if you do know, that they don't know who you know, so that the way you can cut off and create barriers of information, barriers from the information. Breaks in the supply chain. So in case somebody's trying to wrap up that whole network, there's buffer zones, and it's hard to get past some of these. That's why you do this. They do that. David and him do that. So that way, the servant of Saul, Jonathan's shield or armor bearer here, he's not able to report other information that Jonathan is out collaborating with David, right? That would be bad. Jonathan would probably be killed, remember? Same thing for other people. So anyways, somebody at a drop point can leave information, or they could just go mark it. They can go mark it. They can fill it up with something. Like you can take a big spike or a bolt and hollow it out, and you can drive that down into the ground and leave that in the ground, and it'll look like a sprinkler head, or you can disguise it. Some guys just leave coins, literally just a coin on the ground. Pocket change is hard because it's easy to get thrown out, but there's pocket coins and there's little tubes that you can drop in the ground. There's all kinds of crafty inventions out there. There's rocks everywhere. You could just use a rock, tape it to the back of a rock. Guys, get creative. There's these things called glue dots, GLUEDOTS. I don't know why I spelled glue dots, but I did. Glue dots. They're tiny little tabs of sticky stuff, and they're very sticky, but they also will let go, which is also important. But you can use those little glue dots to stick to darn near anything in any kind of orientation, as long as it's pretty lightweight. Those are fantastic little tools. Anyways, you can load up that information cache point. Somebody else can come along, see that it's full because you have a predetermined signal that it's full and loaded, and then your signpost is checked. Once it's then, that person can take that information and leave with it without incriminating you or getting anybody else caught up in that criminal religious activity or whatever it is you're a part of at the time. Remember, sometimes you could just play this with your children at the park, and it's fun and it's exciting. You should teach your children Bible stories from the Bible and tradecraft and spycraft, because you know what? You don't always have to tell your children that, hey, guess what? Daddy's part of an underground church movement in Somalia, and they're going to execute me if they find out. So let's teach you a way to understand how to play this game without everybody getting killed. Because you got to figure out those conversations. You should probably have those conversations ahead of time. So I encourage you, if you need to go on the run, read the Bible, because it's full of runners, and they're the best humans ever on the run. Because Jonathan and David say goodbye to each other. Jonathan's going to die. David's going to live. David is going to make a terrible decision here, kind of, because the next choice he makes when he goes on the run is going to be looking for weapons. That's not a bad move. The problem is, David goes to get the swords from Goliath. He doesn't know that. He just knows he needs weapons badly, immediately. Because remember, David crawled out of his house, not his armory. David didn't get to load up on his bug-out bag, and he didn't go check his vault and pull out 6 ARs and 4 Glock pistols and 8 magazines and 3 smoke grenades, and he didn't have his tack light. He didn't have his body armor, and he didn't have his loadout that he'd prepped for this day. So he goes to meet with a priest at a different house, I believe in Shiloh. I can't get into it too much. I'm going to get too excited. But anyways, the decision he makes next is going to be costly for an inordinate amount of people. But this is where David is going to get his mighty men. David is going to go and try to get some weapons, and then David is going to flee into the wilderness. And it is in the wilderness that all these other jacked up yos and bros and gals and people from all over the freaking land of Israel are going to gather to him in the wilderness, and David's going to build his mighty men there. So we're going to have more mighty men talk later. I love you guys. Be vigilant out there. Remember, the days are outrageously evil, which is fantastic news because you were born for such a time as this. So be safe out there. And by that, I mean live as dangerously as physically possible every single moment of your life. Strategically dangerous. But seriously, live dangerously. Be valiant. Be a mighty person for something other than the cowardly systems of man. Go be valiant for your convictions and the God that you love and the people that you love, and go live wondrously abundant and vibrant lives. I love you. Be vigilant, and I'll talk to you soon.